Let's make my Jacob's Well quilt pattern that uses only a layer cake. For this pattern, you will only need 36 10-inch squares. Then with those 10-inch squares, you will subcut one 4.5-inch by 8.5-inch rectangle, one 5-inch square, and one 4.5-inch square. And that's it. You'll just repeat these steps to every single 36 10-inch square that you have. And at this time, I would like to remind you all to measure twice and cut once. Also, do not cut when you are tired or distracted because, as a fun fact, I actually miscut on my own pattern, which thankfully I only needed 36 10-inch squares because I ended up needing those remaining extras. But once everything is cut, you're going to take two 5-inch squares in different prints, and on one of the 5-inch squares on the wrong side of the fabric, you will draw a 45-degree diagonal. Then lay them right sides together and sew a 1/4-inch seam allowance on both sides of that line that you just drew. Afterwards, using a rotary cutter or a pair of scissors, go ahead and cut on that line, and then you will yield two half-square triangles. Then with those half-square triangles, you will want to square them up to a 4.5-inch square. Now, I highly recommend that you piece two blocks at a time because with one of them, whichever color you have on top, you will match it with a 4.5-inch square and a 4.5-inch by 8.5-inch rectangle within the same print. Then with your other matching half square triangle, you'll rotate it and basically make the inverse of the block. You're going to do this because some layer cake bundles may not have the exact even amount of prints. So if things were to get a little bit mixed up, then you might end up having to undo some seams. So just create two at a time just to be safe. Then you will sew your 4.5-inch square together with your half square triangle, followed by your rectangle on the left side, and then you are done. You'll just repeat these steps until you've made a total of 36 quilt blocks measuring as a 8.5-inch square. Once all of your blocks are complete, you will take 4 of them and by rotating them around, you'll match the half square triangles within the center, and you will just repeat this step until you have a 6x6 layout. Then as always, sew your blocks together to form rows, and then lastly, sew your rows together to complete your quilt top. And here's what my quilt top looks like all finished. Second fun fact, last week was not my jam because I even messed up squaring up my half square triangles. And as you can see, none of my points are really matching up. And I am pointing this out because, see, I am human as well, and even I still make mistakes. But either way, this quilt is still going to look amazing. And then for the backing, I am using a black brushstroke print. And for the thread choice, on camera I showed olive green, but last minute I changed my mind and went with the color stone since all of my green and yellow quilts have been quilted with green, so I decided to change it up. But here's what my quilt looks like all quilted, and I did some easy straight line quilting since I needed something to go right with this quilt. But I am still in love with this because as I run my fingers against it, I can feel the batting really puff up those larger spaces, giving this quilt a lot of textury goodness. Now 36 10-inch squares will yield you a 48 by 48 square quilt, and I do hope you have enjoyed today's tutorial. If you could please take a moment to hit that like and subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you can be notified for your next amazing quilt project.